Hello everyone, SMA Watts here, and we are doing a deck tech for the deck we played in Pauper Classic Tuesday. This is a mono white weenie deck, except that instead of using traditional creatures like Loyal Cathar and well, actually most of the traditional white weenie creature base, we're using the ones that generate tokens to try and create a virtual card advantage by rather than playing somewhat resistant creatures that are, 2 mana 2/2s. We're playing 2 mana spells that put two bodies into play so that we can kind of get around most defenses by sort of just swarming them, take better advantage of cards like Guardian's Pledge to just sort of anthem and maybe kill them in one swing. That's the basic plan. Then the card that really makes this deck a viable strategy, in my opinion, is the reprinting of Battle Screech at Common and Vintage Masters. Battle Screech is a phenomenal card. It is almost Lingering Souls, though you could potentially make an argument for it being better than Lingering Souls, because if you have one creature on the battlefield, you can kind of cast it and flash it back for 4 mana instead of 5, and you don't have to splash black. But I'd still say Lingering Souls is, between the two of them, the more powerful, but it's close. It's probably closer actually to just being a slightly worse Spectral Procession. No, it's because it requires countering twice. It's more like Lingering Souls. All right, anyways, so our mana base. We are trying to cast a 4 mana spell, so we do need to run 22 lands at least. I use the cycling land just because when you're running an aggressive deck that has over, once you get to like that 19 land mark in an aggressive deck, you start having to go, well, what if I flood out? And I flooded out a couple times, so it certainly is an issue. There is probably a good argument for running Sen's Enlistment in main deck and not in the sideboard as flood insurance. And I think if I play this deck again next week, there will be a swap. All right, Bone Splitter is essential because your creatures are not by themselves very threatening, but Bone Splitter makes them more threatening. Like every creature, like once you draw Bone Splitter, every token becomes two must answer creatures as they start just swinging in for 3. Oh, excuse me. Doom Traveler. Um, I think Doom Traveler is sort of the most I'm not sure card. It is 2 bodies, and the second one flies, and it is 1 mana. And the deck doesn't have a lot of 1 drops, so I wouldn't ever cut him. But my opinion on him is a little bit neutral, I think. I'm not entirely sure how much I actually like Doom Traveler. Gather the Townsfolk is, while not strictly worse than Raise the Alarm, um, it does run into the problem of it's a sorcery. So you can't use, like, Raise the Alarm has the big advantage if you can cast it during your opponent's upkeep. So if they have a reactive spell to it, they have to react during their turn, not yours. But Gather the Townsfolk has the very slight upside of if you are really close to losing, it makes 5 tokens and not 2. I don't think I ever actually cast it at Faithful Hour though. Like, it's just not. Well, it is not technically just a worse version of Raise the Alarm. The times when it's not are really, really like razor thin, but it's close enough. Like it's close enough, and it does, generally speaking, power out 2/1/1s for 2, which is sort of what we're trying to do. Journey to Nowhere, probably the one of the better choices for removal. I would say Unmake. If you Unmake is certainly a valid. I really don't like that. I do not like doing deck techs on the beta. I'm trying to get used to it because it's about to become the only. But uh, yeah, Journey is like Unmake would be a valid other alternative and is more powerful, but I would be hesitant to run to up our curve more, especially for removal. I mean, the triple white cost of it's not an issue if you're running Unmake, but if I was going to run a 3 mana removal spell, I'd probably be tempted to run Oblivion Ring, not Unmake. Just so I have answers to other things. Raise the alarm. This is our second best token generator. Do not like that. So Raise the Alarm is the big advantage Raise the Alarm has over all the other token generators is its instant speed. So you can cast it on your opponent's turn. As I said earlier, ideally, you cast it during your opponent's upkeep. If you want to try and force them to, if you think they're going to try and counter it, you do it on their upkeep. That forces them to tap down for their turn. Or you can cast it when they attack to make some 2/2 dudes, make 2 1/1 dudes that can just sort of mess up combat math. It just does a lot of things. It's a really powerful spell. And it's been reprinted in M15. Squadron Hawk. Squadron Hawk is a really expensive version of Battle Screech, really. The advantage it has is that it basically is, for one card you drew, it is 4 1/1 flyers. It's a little, and it's more resilient to like bounce. But since we're not trying to abuse the fact that it gives us actual physical cards, it's not functionally that much better than like most of the other most of the token cards. It's much more mana inefficient, but it flies, so ups and downs. We're running 4 Veteran Armorers main deck, and this card's essential because there are a lot of cards, like the mono black matchup I thought was really good, but I realized if the mono black matchup is running 4 Kumbaj Witches, the matchup actually becomes really bad. Like the more creature heavy mono black deck is going to be a real problem, whereas the more removal heavy mono black deck is just sort of, you can steamroll them. So it really comes down to how much, like if they're running the 12 creature version, you're gonna just stomp them. If they're running the 20 creature version, you're in deep trouble. Fortify is probably the card I cited out the most. I just don't like it. There's a good chance that it might have been wrong to cite it out all the times, but it is in fact just a worse version of Guardian's Pledge, and I don't know, it just seems clunky. Like, I wouldn't normally run Trumpet Blast most of the time, and like on the good end it's Trumpet Blast, on the bad end it's just like, if I wanted a card that was going to save my tokens, why am I not running Rootborn Defenses? Like I think Fortify is the wrong card here. I think you either want something else, or you definitely want something else. I think you either want a more offensive. I think you either want Sen's Enlistment to put more tokens into play, or if you're worried about saving your tokens, I think you want Rootborn Defenses to save your tokens and put more creatures into play. That's just my opinion, though. Guardian's Pledge. I made the mistake of citing this out a couple times, and I realized you need Guardian's Pledge because your creatures by themselves are not threatening, and 4 Bone Splinters isn't enough to get them to make them threatening. Guardian's Pledge enables you to just turn an attack for 3 or 4 into an attack for like 12, and just kind of make your opponent makes a bunch of blocks that they think are perfectly, good, like not even just reasonable, just good. They're going to kill all your creatures, and then you turn it into either trades or just I win combats. It's such a, like, the double Anthem effect. For all intents and purposes, at Pauper, this is Dictative Heliod. It will have the same effect the turn it comes down for 3 mana. Now, it doesn't win you the game the next turn like Dictative Heliod does, but it's close. I mean, sort of. It's as close as we're going to get in Pauper. And then Battle Screech, our rock star here. The important thing, like the most important thing about Battle Screech, is that the tokens fly. This makes this your best token generator because they're evasive. and it can really just push it over the top. I wish, um, like I wish one of the other flying token generators was legal in Pauper. Like, I'm really shaky on whether or not triplicate spirits when it comes out in M15 will be good enough, because Battle Screech is not the easiest thing to flash back. Which, and to cast triplicate spirits, you either need 6 mana or you need 2 creatures and 4 mana, which makes it is a harder version of Battle Screech to cast the first time. So, but it does make 3 tokens, so I'll probably test it out at least. Like, I'll probably, when M15 comes out, I'll probably switch the Fortifies for 2 triplicate spirits just to see if I hate them or not. But I think this deck's actually really strong. It has some bad matchups to decks that aren't going to play fair, basically. Like, I played against a mid-range infect deck that I'm with the design I have right now, I don't think I can beat. Though I will say I made some sideboarding mistakes. Some mistakes. Let's go to my sideboard. There are some mistakes in what I have here. All right, Racer Golem. My initial thought was Racer Golem would give me a, like, for the matchups where I need a big threat, like that, they can deal with my tokens fairly easily, but I need a big threat. I thought Racer Golem would work. It doesn't. This is not a very good card in the deck. I mean, it can just mise games being a 3-mana 3/4, but it's just not good enough. I think this should have been Guardians of the Guild Pack. Just because the matchups where you want something that's big and resilient, the 3/4 is not as big as, like, a 2/4 that they can't remove is much better than the 3/4 that's just hard to deal with. All right, Sen's Enlistment probably should have been main deck over Fortify. I don't like Fortify. Standard Bearer, I wouldn't replace. Celestial Failure. I think there is a argument to be made for Celestial Flare versus the White Light Sunlands. And I think it comes down to, if you think you're going to play against Boggles, you need to have Celestial Flare to have a chance against it. However, against most other decks, you'd probably rather have Sunlands. But if you're playing against an enchantment deck, Celestial Flare you sort of need it. And then there's Dust to Dust. I think if Affinity is not a thing, like, it's a thing, but if it's not as much of a thing, you'd probably be better off with Sundering Growth. So I think I made a couple of sideboarding design mistakes. Like, I think this should have been Guardian of the Guild Pack. This should have been main deck. This should have been Sundering Growth. I could probably then have squeezed in a couple of Sunlances to have both Sunlance and Celestial Flare, and I think that would have probably been better. His Sunlance is so good against so many matchups. And it's possible also the 2-mana Morph enchantment that gives your creatures +0/+1. What is that called? Morph. Pauper. Quantity 0. Luminar Thread. This card is probably I would say this card's probably worth at least considering. I mean, Veteran Armor is this with a body, so I think this might be also a card worth considering, at least in the sideboard. Those are my thoughts. I liked the deck. I think it was really powerful, and I only felt like I didn't have a really good shot against the deck that, it was Infect, which I loathe the Infect mechanic. but it was in fact, and it, it was a deck that was both fast, and because it was running Viridian Longbow, which is another card you might consider in this deck, because it was running Viridian Longbow, it could just mow my field down. Like Infect plus Viridian Longbow is super hard to beat. Like it turns Viridian Longbow into an infinite serrated arrows that can go to players' heads. So it's yeah. I recommend trying this deck out. It's super cheap on Moto. It's only like a 5 ticket deck. And well, I think it might be slightly more if you're running the standard bearers in your sideboard, but I think that might bring it up to like 6 or 7. But it's super cheap. It's actually pretty fun, and relatively easy to pick up. So I recommend it.